you, technology doesn't like me most of the time. When Dr. Dirksen asked if I would like to speak about Moodle, I was pretty shocked because I feel like everything I do on Moodle is clunky and not graceful at all. And I remembered my mom's advice to me when I was younger. She said, she calls me Dee. Dee, you don't have to be good at everything, honey. You just have to know somebody else who is. So I said, okay, who in our department is actually good at Moodle? And that's when I thought of Sarah. So I thought, okay, this is the perfect opportunity for me to take what I feel like that I use is really clunky and not graceful at all, and for me to learn how to fix that before I present in front of people, and get to know Sarah a little bit better and work with Sarah, because we hadn't actually worked together before. So it's been nice, and Sarah is the genius behind Moodle in our department, I think. So if you need to know something, I am not the appropriate person to ask. Sarah probably is. We have a big push in our department right now about collaborating both with each other as professors and with students, and getting our students to collaborate together. And there's a big push, I know, in mathematics for undergraduate research, which involves a good deal of collaboration there with professor and student and professor. So there's this idea of collaboration that's been walking around in my brain in many different aspects for months now. So when we started talking about this, it was a natural thing to say, well, how do we collaborate with Moodle? Well, first of all, Sarah's taught me. So there's our professor collaboration. And then I'm going to show you one example of what Sarah has taught me and kind of how I use this in my classrooms. And then Sarah is going to talk a little bit more about how students collaborate with each other for Moodle. So here's my first class that I wanted to show you. This is my Logic and Sets course, and all they have is a midterm and a final exam. It's an upper division course. After they took their midterm exam, I was really anxious to find out how they felt about the midterm. And one way you can do this is by using feedback on Moodle. So Sarah showed me how to create feedback. And if I click on this right here, you'll see that several things come up where I can edit my questions that I have on my feedback, or show the responses, or this is really what I was concerned with here, analysis. So here, this shows every one of my questions. There was some technical difficulties because this is one of the first ones that I did, and for some reason it scored I wanted a 1 to 10 scale, and it put it in as -1 to -10. I don't know why that happened, but I went in and changed it, so some of them are positive and some of them are negative, so my average is not correct on there because of that. But I gave them just a few little questions, asking them pretty much how they felt about the test. The first one was, were they comfortable with the test, the actual material on the test? And the second one was, how do they feel they fared with what they wanted to do? If they wanted to make a 100, do you feel like you actually made that? And for the most part, they felt like they did okay. And then I actually asked them questions, what is going well with this class? And you see I have some very conscientious students that they were verbose there, which is very helpful. And what aspects of this class are you concerned about? So this gives me some feedback to kind of address that before it becomes a problem, right? If I'm doing something that is concerning to my students, I want to know that before the end of the semester, before they take their actual course evaluations. I want to know, how can I improve? So this kind of has given me some midterm feedback as to what I'm doing in the course. And then, was today's exam more or less difficult than you thought it would be? It was less difficult for 15 people, more difficult for 1. So this course Why would that be? This course is heavy on the amount of coursework that they have. They have pretty much one assignment every week and a half, and the assignments are very, very difficult and very time consuming. So I think they were all under the impression that I would expect them to be able to do on their test what they had to do on their homework, which obviously is not reasonable, right? I mean, students don't think about these things. They think, oh, I spent 20 hours on this homework and now I've got to do it all in an hour and 15 minutes. No. So that actually, I wondered if that were the case, and I think that really shows that was the case. So this is just how, it's an example of what a little feedback thing that I had given them. You'll notice here that I said, please answer the following questions, and I gave them a deadline. If at least 90% of the class responds, then everyone will receive a homework grade of 25 points. So they do get rewarded for participating. I wanted the feedback to be anonymous. I did not want their responses to be tagged with a name. So the only way I can get them to participate and have them be responsible for it with other people is to give them a little bit of credit for it in some way. The second example is the same. If 90% of the class responds, then everyone will get a quiz grade of a 10 there. This is contemporary mathematics. This is actually my one of my service courses. And the feedback was actually, I have a student, Michelle Curris, who is working in my contemporary math class as a TA. She is taking the course we call Practicum in Teaching. And that course allows her to sit in on another course that she's already shown proficiency in. She gets to watch the lectures. She gets to teach twice, and this was her second time teaching, actually. And I give her feedback on her lessons. I look at her lesson plans before she actually presents to the class, and I give her feedback on them. And that's how she kind of gets her grade, by the presentation she does. And she also tutors the students that are in the class and things of that nature. We've found in the mathematics division, we've found our practicum in teaching to be a great experience for our math education students. And they're allowed to take, they're allowed to do this twice and get 2 hours worth of credit for it. So it does count towards their math requirements. I got them to do, and they haven't finished this because it's actually due tonight. I got them to do this for Michelle, because I told Michelle, you know, we have course evaluations in our courses. Those are indispensable for me, that I really make adjustments based on what is stated in my course evaluations. And I wanted her to kind of get that same experience. Now, I have not given these to Michelle yet because they're due tonight, and this is the first time I've done this with a practicum in teaching student. So I certainly hope it doesn't it doesn't offend Michelle. But I made it simple. On a scale from 1 to 10, how well did you understand Michelle's lecture today? And you'll see they've actually rated her at a 7.92. 12 people out of 20 have responded. And then here, how well did you enjoy her lecture today? Well, 7, that's pretty good. For a a service mathematics course, that is pretty good. How well did you understand the relevance of the material from Michelle's lecture today to your studies at Lee? I actually think that is hugely important, and I was impressed by what she scored on that one. And then I asked what was something positive about Michelle's lecture, and do you have any suggestions for improvement for Michelle's lecture today? And I haven't given these to her yet, and I don't know about you, but when I get my course evaluations, I have to be in the right frame of mind to read them, or I take them personally. I have to be in the frame of mind where I can step back and be objective and actually say, does this person is this a legitimate comment? Is this something I need to adjust? Or is this just somebody griping because they didn't get the grade they wanted? So I haven't given this to Michelle yet, and I don't know how that will go over, but you're welcome to ask me towards the end of the week by email how it went if you're curious. So these are just 2 examples of how this is used. I thought also let me go back in here. I thought also I would kind of show you how to create some feedback. So I'm going to turn the editing on, and I'm going to go into a blank folder. That way if I mess something up, my students are not confused. And I'm going to add a resource. From here, you just select feedback. And you're going to type in feedback. Type in a name for the feedback, and you do need a description, so take this, please. And then I do this timing thing. I don't like to leave it open-ended, so when I open the feedback, I just open it whenever I post it online, or you can set it to open at a different point in time if you want to. And then let's close the feedback tonight, very close to midnight. And there are other things on here that really I don't understand fully, to be honest. Okay, I told you I'm not the expert, right? Sarah is the expert. I can kind of guess what some of them mean, but I've only used what I really needed. So that's really all I've really needed at this point. So I'm going to save and return to course. And that creates my feedback minus the questions. So I'm going to click on feedback now. And these are the tabs that you can use to manipulate your feedback. I'm going to go to edit questions. And I have played with this a good bit. We want to add a question. So it gives you different kinds of questions that you can add. You can actually add a page break if you want to, so that the next thing comes on the next page. You can get information from them. The ones that I used were the longer text answer one and the numeric answer. They also have multiple choice ones and short text answer and information ones I found to be very, very useful. So let's just go with a longer text answer, and I'm going to add this question to the activity. I'm going to make it required. You don't have to select that if you're not interested in everybody answering it. And my question is, how did I do today? And the label does show up. So the only thing I've done is label these with the numbers that the questions are. So this is question number 1. You can choose the width and the number of the lines and all of that kind of stuff, but I have found what they supply to be sufficient. So I'm going to save the question. And it shows up in this way. And you just keep adding as many questions as you want to it. I would not suggest adding very many, because if you're wanting them to do it as a favor to you, they want it to be very short. So 5 or 6 I've found to be all I really needed to get the information that I want. And that is something new that I have learned from Sarah about Moodle that I have found extremely helpful. Do you guys have any questions? Using the feedback itself? Not really. No, I'm kind of when an idea sparks me, I say, why don't I try that? And if it fails, I don't tell anybody that I tried the idea. And if it's a wonderful success, then I take all the credit for it. No, I really don't. I thank Sarah again. So I really don't know how else I would use it. I would imagine you could do many things with it, though. So I do know that one semester, the contemporary mathematics class that I showed you, that's a service course to the university, I will very frequently ask the students what they want to learn at the beginning of the semester. So I could envision using it for that. That would be much better than the way I've done it in the past. The way I've done it in the past is I actually send out an email to my class the day before their class, their first class, and I say, your first assignment, here it is. Find one mathematical concept that you think would be useful for this course and for your life, and let me know about that mathematical concept. You can just give me a title, a name, a description, and this is kind of our way of voting on what we want to learn this semester. And I have them email me an hour before the class, and before the class I go in and kind of check all the emails and see what the recurring themes were. I don't let them choose the entire course, but for some reason they seem more invested in it when they've picked out some of the topics themselves. So throughout the semester, when I go over something that I know somebody mentioned in some way, shape, or form, I'll say, this is something that you actually put on your survey at the beginning of the semester. So I could see using the feedback with that, but honestly, other than that, I haven't thought about it.
Since you only have 2 big exams, I think it's really a good idea to get their impression of that test.
I think so too. It's very useful. In the logic and sets course, I really had a lot of people panicking around the week to 2 right before their exam. And I heard a lot of, oh, this class is so hard. I don't know how I'm going to be able to pass the midterm. And I would hear it, when they didn't know I was listening. So I thought, it was my opinion, that they were stressing out needlessly because their homework was so difficult. And they didn't realize that I'm not going to be cruel and unusual and to give them an exam that they can't do within 75 minutes. I think that they thought that I was expecting too much out of them. And after looking at the feedback that I got from them, the feedback supports that opinion. So
did they slap off any after they had the test that they thought was easier?
I've just given them their first assignment, but I changed the assignments up just in case. I was worried about that. So I changed the assignments up. I had been giving them a week and a half to complete every assignment, and I had been telling them they must work on their own, that they couldn't work with each other in the classroom. It's a proofs-based course, and it's the first time that they've ever done any proving at all in mathematics. So it's a very different type of course than what they've had in the past. Because of that, I think it's very important that they be able to do that independently. But I also think in mathematics that mathematics is best done within community, and that if you always do mathematics independently, you're not really gleaning everything that you could from it. So I gave them their first homework assignment today, and it's due Friday by noon. It's the same difficulty as the last ones, but the time period in which they have to return it to me has been cut in half. And I allowed them to choose one partner to work together if they so chose. So I thought it was reasonable to cut the time period in half as long as I let them work together. So I think mixing it up that much will keep them from saying, oh, this is the same old stuff that we've had before, and I don't need to be able to do it as well as I did last time. I think it'll be enough of a change that it'll compensate for that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Now, do you get the level of participation that you asked for?
I got 100% here. I had 16 students in this course, and 16 people responded, but it is a majors course. The other course is contemporary mathematics. There were 20 people in attendance for class that day. So if they didn't attend class, they can't get the extra 10 quiz points anyway, because it was the questions were specifically about that class. It wouldn't be relevant to them. But of the people that attended, there were 20 there, and 12 have responded so far. It's due tonight at 11:55. So I honestly don't know if I'll get it or not. With it only being a quiz grade of 10 points, it's out of 1,000 points, they may say that's not enough of an incentive for me. And if they say that, I think 12 is enough for me to give Michelle, and for the purposes that I want to use it for Michelle. I think 12 out of 20 is sufficient. But if I don't get a good response this time, then the next time I may make it worth 2 quiz grades. I wouldn't be willing to do any more than that. I'm a little bit stingy with my points. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to hand the rest of it over to Sarah.
Wonderful. And I have to say that I've used feedbacks in my courses, but I even learned from Deborah because I've never done a numeric one with ratings. So that was a neat idea. I've just asked open-ended questions, so I was excited about that. I also have to say that a lot of what I've learned about Moodle is not from me personally, but I taught with Moodle when I taught high school. So I went to lots of workshops and got lots of information from other people. So mine is just a progression of using it for many, many years and getting ideas from lots and lots of people. The one thing I wanted to continue to follow up on with Deborah with the feedback is another way that I do use I use it is as an introduction at the beginning of the semester. I have my students, this one is 14 questions. It's actually 12 unless they're an athlete. So I do use page breaks if they are an athlete or in a music group or think they're going to be gone, then they have a special extra page where they have to tell me about what they're going to be gone for. Everybody else just does the main questions. So I do have them give me a little bit more information about themselves, plus kind of what they're thinking about, major strengths, and special information. And then I give them an opportunity to tell me what they think they're going to be learning about in the class, and expectations that they have and questions that they have. So I used to do this on a paper format. Now it's an online format. This one is an assignment since it's so many questions, and they get a 10 out of 10 if they do it. So it's their first homework assignment. It also, I found, makes them find Moodle and know where it is to use it, especially with freshmen who aren't used to using Moodle. One of the things I do with the analysis then for how I want to use it is I will export the results to Excel because that will let me sort them by the student. So this one I do not as an anonymous one because I need to know who it's connected to. And this one, again, sorts it by question, but there's a second detailed report at the bottom where it sorts it by person. So I can sort and say, okay, I want to know how many say yes, they're going to be traveling, pull all those to the top and see who's in that group. I can sort by strengths or answers to different questions if there's any allergies, and then I can just put it back into the spreadsheet. And I will copy and paste this into my Portico spreadsheet so that I can see their pictures by it to kind of help get to know them. So that's another way that I use the feedback option. Another example of collaboration outside the class that we've just started, and Brett may kill me for introducing this, but we asked him if we could have one for a class where we had multiple teachers teaching the same class. And so this is a Master General Chemistry course. This is actually where I built this collaboration page. Go back to the course itself. This is one where only the people teaching chemistry have access to it. So we never have to worry about a student seeing something that they're not supposed to see because there are no students in this course. It is a place for us to share resources with each other about teaching the course, share PowerPoint, share exam stuff. You know, we can share exam questions, we can share our analysis of the student exams and which questions they're missing and stuff, and we can do all of that within a site for just the faculty teaching the chemistry course. So it's a way that we can collaborate with each other as well and store that data in a way that we know is secure and none of our students are going to accidentally find it. So those are kind of the major outside of class collaborations. The other ones I was going to just give examples of are ones that I use in my class as a way of collaborating with my students. And one of them that I really like is a wiki. I teach a physical science class, so it's non-majors and a lot of elementary education majors. So one of the things that they have is a project where they work in groups and they build a wiki on information on a unit that we're covering. And so while they're working on this, we're covering the different science behind the topics, helping them understand what they need to as they're doing their investigations. The reason I use a wiki is it's like an editable web page that multiple people can edit and work on together. Now, they can't have two people working on the exact same page at the same time, but other than that, they can work on it. I do have, if you're interested more in wikis, I have a link to a YouTube video that explains what a wiki is, because that's one of my students' questions always is, what is a wiki? They're not as familiar with those, but it's, you know, that's how Wikipedia got its name. It is a wiki that multiple people can edit. And so that just gives them some background information. I give them the components that they have to include in their presentation. They have to give background. They have to talk about that source of energy. The big question that they're trying to answer in this project is, what source of energy should we use in the future in our community? So it's very open-ended. They each choose a little piece of it that they want to investigate, and then they start researching. And most of this is done outside of class time, and I was just very impressed with this group in some of just the level of detail. This is the most detailed I've gotten so far, but similar. They're usually very good for the amount of time we give them to work on them in class. They do a lot of extra. So they have to provide an overview. One of the things I like about the wiki is they can put in pictures as long as they cite where they came from. They can insert YouTube videos that explain things, and they're just directly embedded in the page. They have to talk about benefits, drawbacks, and they actually do an experiment. And we give them a lab time where they can do their experiment inside or outside of the lab. So they have to put everything that they need in order to do their experiment, including their data tables, and they have to have a chart or graph. It can be hand-drawn and taken a picture of, or they can use Excel as long as they've got their information, and they take pictures of them actually doing the experiment, okay, so that other groups can see how this was done. And then they give their opinion and some suggested exam questions, and they have to have one at level 1, critical thinking skill 1, one at critical thinking skill 5, and one in the middle. So we go through and apply that, and then of course all their citations. So the wiki lets them collaborate. They don't have to be physically present together all the time. They can divide up the work in their groups of 4 and decide who wants to work on which part, who wants to focus on which part, and then they just combine it all in. And then we take a class time where they get 5 minutes to overview their wiki. But then they have to study it the rest of the way on their own outside of class. And they have a test question. Usually I can take from their test questions and make a collaborative kind of test question. Usually there's like 2 multiple choice questions, and then they have an essay where they compare and contrast 2. So they should know theirs very well, and if they study the wikis, they should know somebody else's well enough to be able to write about it. I don't tell them that's what their test questions will be, but it works pretty well to cover a variety of things. So this is one of the ways that they collaborate. I get a lot of different things, and one of the things that I try to do with this is leave open-ended what technology they want to use. I care that they get the information in, but I don't really care what format their final presentation is. So I have some groups that prefer Prezi, and so they just put a link to their Prezi in the website and on the wiki. There we go. And so the students can still find it, and it needs Flash to play. And I don't think it's going to let me install it on this computer, but they put all the same information in their Prezi. So they still have links to the videos, the YouTube videos are embedded, the pictures of their research are embedded. It's just a different format. So that leaves it open to what the students are comfortable with and familiar with. When they're editing a page, it doesn't take them too long to figure out how to edit because it's got a lot of the same features that we find in Word and Excel. You can bold, italicize, you can insert pictures, bullets, numbers, change your color and your font. Okay, so they're used to a lot of these symbols using it in Word, so it's not that hard to actually put it into here. One of the other things I like about a wiki is if you have someone that goes into someone else's wiki and deletes all their information, it's okay because there's a backup copy of it. And they can just go say, I want to go back to this version. And I just pull back up that version and it's back in place. And we don't have to worry about anyone losing all their work, somebody ruining their site. That was more of a concern at the high school level than the college level. Here it's, oops, we accidentally deleted this. And it's like, okay, I can pull that back up and get it for you. Some of them really want to pattern it after Wikipedia. One of the things I do at the bottom of each one is I insert a link back to the main page. Otherwise you kind of have to go through the map and it's not quite as user-friendly. So when I set up each page, I will copy and paste a link back to the main page just to make it easy to navigate. And I tell them, please don't delete it. And sometimes they do and we put it back in. But it just makes it easy if there's one link to put it back with. One of my groups wanted to do it very much like Wikipedia, and I actually have had a group use Wikipedia before for their project, and they just put it all on Wikipedia and put a Wikipedia link. So they were contributing to the overall general knowledge for everyone. The one thing with using Wikipedia itself is they need to be a little bit more careful on their citations, and if they're using pictures and stuff, they actually have to have permission. Whereas this is for a class site, and so we can get away with not requesting permission, just having the correct citations. We want to have an outline So they have kind of like a table of content. Okay. And they get very creative. And it's just a lot of fun. I learn stuff from them every time. They come up with new things. So that's one of the ways that I have my students collaborate with each other during the course. And they'll do their final project in a similar format. If you are wanting to set up a wiki, this one is not quite as easy as setting up the feedback, but it's not horrible. So if I add a wiki, it works the same starting point as what Deborah showed you with feedback. We're going to go add resource, and this time we're going to check a wiki. Again, you have to give it a name. And a description, and this description doesn't, well, I guess this description is also visible to them. And then you name the first page. Actually. And that first page is usually the one I make as a table of contents, so they can kind of see all the different groups. There are different kinds of wiki. You can have students create an individual wiki as opposed to a collaborative wiki. You can also divide it up by groups, but it's a little bit more intense in terms of being able to let them see each other's groups, even though they can't edit each other's groups. So I've just found I've never had anyone go edit somebody else's group to where it's a problem, so I've just left it open-ended. So I usually don't use a group mode. One of the things I do like about Moodle is they have all the little eyes. So if you're not sure what something means, you know, they give you the little drop-down help box. I usually use HTML, but I don't usually force the format. So if a group really wants to use another coding format, they could. I just don't usually set it up that way. Again, you can restrict access, decide when it becomes visible and when they're no longer allowed access. And then if I save this, it says, okay, what do you want your first page to be called? I usually still leave it as whatever the site was called. Create the page. And so here is my first page. And then the tricky part that I always forget, so I actually have in my Outlook calendar, I have a note that reminds me what the key codes are. To create a new page, you use a double bracket and call it what you want. And that's the part that is not always intuitive to me. Over the summer, sometimes I forget how to create a page. And I let them usually choose their group titles and I type them in. But whatever you put in double brackets, it will see that as a new page. The first time you save it, it'll show up in red. And that means the page actually hasn't been created yet. But if you click on the team name, it says, is this what you want to call it? Yes. And then it actually creates a page for that team. And then this is where I will go in and put a link back to the topics list at the end. I'll usually fill in, copy and paste their team name again. And then at the bottom I'll put this and tell them to leave it on. To link, you just highlight and click the little chains button to link it, and it'll ask you for the URL. And if you put that back as the main page, then it will automatically go back to that page. So in my little sticky note, I paste the name of the page, the URL for the page, so that I can easily get back and forth to it. And that's it. Once you have created the page, then those will show up in blue. If you forget, you can always get to them through the map. It lists every page you've created, where you actually have a page, so you can always go through the map as well. But I find that the map is not as intuitive to students, so I like to get them the links. Once this is actually linked to a page, it'll start showing up in blue as opposed to the red. I've also used the collaboration wikis in my education courses. I teach a course during the summer where they are working on designing units, and we talk about the different components that their unit should have. They each take a topic, and they compile resources for each other on their topic. So this was one of the resources page, and she found a lot of websites and she just put it in. But then if somebody else comes along and finds a good resource, they can go in and just put that underneath on her page. And so they're compiling everything in one place. The last tool I've used in the past and sometimes is a glossary. And a glossary is similar to a wiki, but it's not editable by everybody. You can make it so that the students can continue to edit, or you can give them a time limit. You can edit this for so long and then it expires and you're stuck with what you've written. I tend to leave it open for them to edit long term, but this is from the education course I teach with Dr. Singletary, where I put some resources in a glossary and then students can add resources for things that they find that are useful. My physical science students also do a project on atoms and the history of atoms, and they do that in a glossary format, but they're just starting that now. So I checked this morning and no one's actually posted in their glossary yet. So these are ways that then other students can go back in and see. With Dr. Singletary's class, we also use IQs. We use the discussion board where we have them post response to the reading, and Dr. Singletary actually gets the credit for the term IQ. I liked it. They post an idea and a question for their reading each time. And so they can see, once they post, they can see each other's responses, but they can't see anybody else's until they've posted theirs. So they can't copy from each other. So it's a question and answer discussion. And we haven't encouraged via points for them to reply to each other, and they've got enough going on while they're taking their methods. They have not really wanted to do an extra thing, but I have done some classes where we force them to reply to somebody else's posts so that they can kind of create a discussion more ongoing. I also post, this is a web 1.0, so to speak. It's a one-directional thing. I will also post, for my physical science course, they come in at so many different levels of background and their understanding that in each unit I post extra practice, and I give them extra worksheets with the key so that if they need extra help, they can go do those. If they don't need extra help, they're doing their homework just fine. They don't have to worry about it, but it can also be good review for the exam. And I'll post a page with resources that, again, have different videos or simulations. If I use a video in class, I'll post that in that chapter so that they can find it as well. So those are some of the collaboration tools that I have found useful. Any questions?
IQs. And how did you build those? Did you build those with a wiki or with a...
Those are actually a discussion.
Okay.
So when you're adding, if you do the forum, yeah. So if you add a forum, there are different types of forums, again, and it will, if you click the information button, it tells you what each one is. We use the question and answer form. So IQ example. And the description, and there's the subscriptions are whether or not you want to be emailed every time someone posts. My email gets full enough. I don't usually like to be emailed. You can track how many people see it, how many people when they're doing stuff, how many attachments you want them to be able to put on it, any time frames, how you want it to be graded. Moodle is set up to where if you want them to give feedback, not on each other's comments, but on the quality of their comments, like evaluating, did they indeed give an idea? Did they cite, something from the reading? So you're grading the process of it. You can do this rating system where the students can rate each other's posts and responses and give each other feedback on the process. But then if you save and display, and then as the teacher, I go in and add the question. And so for the IQs, we have both math and science students, so we'll have a math question or a math reading assignment and a science reading assignment. And so here's where I would put what they read. And then again, you can opt in to get an email every time someone posts, or you can say, I don't want an email every time someone posts. I'll just go in and check it when they're done, any attachments, and then post a form. Then students will be able to reply to it. And that one is time sensitive. You have 30 minutes to edit it once you create it or do something with it, and then you can't change it anymore. You could add a new comment, but you can't you can't edit what you've already made. Any other questions? It can be easy to get sucked in playing with Moodle. Well, thank you.